When I was a kid, I would freak out whenever I found something related to a video game I loved. Like, when I heard there was a Mario movie, I was a rabid dog. Hell, even after watching it and being disappointed that it wasn't a cartoon, I still loved it to death just because it had Mario and Luigi in it. Nowadays, I love it for an entirely different reason, but back then, just seeing Mario and Luigi on the big screen, even if they were barely Mario and Luigi, was enough for me. The Super Mario Bros. Super Show was another favorite of mine, especially when the Zelda cartoon would come on. I had simple, preteen marketed novelizations of Ocarina of Time and Oracle of Ages, as well as a Wario Land Choose Your Own Adventure book. Whatever I could find with the characters I loved on it, I'd immediately hoard away. As I got older, I got way into anime and manga, as I'd imagine most of us did back in the early 2000s. Things like Akira Himekawa's quality Zelda adaptations and the 4Kids mangling of the F-Zero anime grabbed my attention around then. There was also the Kirby anime and long-running Mario and Pokemon manga to choose from. In fact, the myriad of insane Pokemon manga from back during Pokemania is probably deserving of a video all its own. Seriously, check out The Electric Tale of Pikachu. Uncensored. The fact that there has to be an uncensored version should tell you everything you need to know. If you're interested in a Nintendo series, odds are there's been at least something put to print about it, one way or another. Hell, relating back to this channel, even Golden Sun got a gag manga. There's one series, however, where the manga adaptation is quite a bit more important to the overall scheme of things. In fact, the manga is the only canonical way to experience the very, very important backstory of its main character. You've probably figured from that statement alone that I'm talking about Metroid. The much-lauded backstory of Samus Aran and the famous supposed characterization of her nemesis Ridley as a serial-killing psychopath and not just a big, stupid animal are only found in the pages of the Metroid manga, written by Koji Tozawa and illustrated by Kenji Ishikawa. These 16 chapters were originally found in the pages of Japanese-only publication Magazine Z, starting in January 2003 and running until May 2004. Although there are various inconsistencies between this adaptation and games like Metroid Fusion or that other one I'm not gonna talk about, it's generally considered canon in broad strokes and still gets references as recently as Metroid Samus Returns. I'm not here to talk about that Metroid manga though. I'm here to talk about the one where Samus rides on top of her ship while holding a thermonuclear missile launcher 20 times her size, then fires it manually at a gigantic space station staffed by warmongering arms dealers. I'm talking about the one where somebody posing as Samus opens fire on a hospital with a minigun, only after going full Joker and bombing the place. We're talking about the one where Samus regularly blows holes out of people with the plasma beam while teaching a young boy the gravity of taking a life. Today, we're going to talk about the best manga based on a Nintendo property ever written. Metroid Samus and Joey. Written and illustrated by Itsuki Koji. Not that Joey. Not that one either. Published in Comic Bomb Bomb, another manga magazine, from December 2002 to May 2005, and translated by the badass mothers over at Metroid Database, Samus and Joey is a unique look at the Metroid universe, taking place primarily through the eyes of a young boy from a distant, unexciting frontier planet. Yes, despite the name, Samus and Joey is much more about Joey than it is about Samus. Don't worry, this isn't a Sonic X situation where you're screaming at the annoying kid to get off the screen so the actual video game character can do things. Or a Fatal Frame movie situation where you're wondering when they're gonna actually start taking pictures of ghosts and stop talking about lesbian schoolgirls. Samus is very much a main character and has the lion's share of the action here, but her arc is done long before this manga begins. Not to rag on Joey, of course. Believe me, he'll become a favorite after reading this one. Taking place between Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion, Samus Aran is already recognized as the most badass bounty hunter in the galaxy. a warrior to be feared and respected by all. Most people in the comic refer to Samus as male just because nobody really knows who she actually is, which is something she doesn't really care to correct anyone on. I really like that touch, actually. Samus doesn't care if people know who she is. She just wants to get to work. There's a scene around the midpoint where another bounty hunter, known as Chopper Zegan, appears. He claims that he's going to take the title of greatest bounty hunter from Samus, and that soon everyone will know him as number one. Aran walks past him unfazed and simply tells him, "You can call yourself number one if you like. That's fine enough by me." This is just a couple pages after that handheld nuking Samus delivers, by the way. As you might have guessed, Samus and Joey is much more action-packed and over-the-top than Metroid's usual fare. Missing are the quiet, contemplative moments of Samus walking in silence through the remains of a lost civilization. Replacing that is high-impact violence, minor philosophizing over the nature of war and death, and of course, how to bring hope to a galaxy full of violence and corruption. The heart of Samus and Joey is the relationship between the two of them, and the growth of the latter from a kid throwing tantrums for not getting his way into a hero and protector that even Samus can rely on. While I wouldn't exactly call the character development mind-blowing, and the writing can be downright silly from time to time, the presentation of the characters and the universe are what sell the story, and make it into something that has you grinning ear to ear. Joey is a young boy from the frontier planet Liberty, a rustic world where farming and ranching seem to be the primary trades. We're introduced to him as something of a prankster, a nuisance that harasses the local wildlife, but he's got a good heart. You see, like many a young boy in the world of Japanese graphic novels, Joey wants to get strong to protect the people around him. His father was also a strong fighter who battled evil such as the space pirates using a special piece of equipment called the Field Knuckle, an heirloom that's been passed down to our Joey here. Much like Samus's own power suit, it derives its power from the will of the wearer, meaning that the more that Joey believes in himself and his cause, the more powerful he becomes. If there's ever been a more literal device for portraying the growth of a shonen protagonist in any publication, I'd love to hear about it. The Field Knuckle lets Joey punch stuff really hard, shoot his own beam, and most importantly, create a nearly impervious shield to protect those he cares about. I think it's a very deliberate choice that the kid's strongest and most frequently used ability is about protecting himself and others rather than attacking. He also has sick rocket heelys. It isn't long after wondering what Ganon's up to that Planet Liberty is invaded by space pirates. Let's just get this out of the way. This manga starring a kid does not make it kiddie. Trust me. The space pirates in Samus and Joey do not mess around. In fact, this is probably the most brutal the pirates are ever portrayed on screen. They will happily slaughter or enslave anyone, including children, and any attempts to fight back will end in you bleeding out on the floor at best. Predictably, our boy Joey stands up to the pirates, who tell the people of his village that their choices are slavery or death. He manages to snatch a gun from an unsuspecting invader, but either the trigger is too heavy or it's got a biometric lock on it. But before the pirate can blow the kid into meat cubes, he's interrupted by the one and only Samus Aran. She makes an incredible entrance. Leaping from a cliff, she lands heel first on the head of one of the invaders, crushing his skull like a grape, and proceeds to open fire on the pirates, turning them into Swiss cheese. The fight ends with the final living pirate taking Joey captive, holding a gun to his head and demanding Samus let him live. He even offers to take her directly to his leader, but she tells him to fire away because he isn't leaving this planet alive. When he calls her bluff, Samus catches the bullet. Just catches it. And I don't mean she gets between the two of them. I mean she walks up and plucks the bullet out of the air from several feet away. And Joey's head was a flinch's distance away from that gun. The way that this manga portrays Samus at her full power is so fucking cool. After catching the bullet, she vacates the kidnapper's abdominal cavity before heading into the mountains to find his leader. who has apparently landed on Liberty to test his new bioweapon, a Metroid. Or, that's what Samus supposes it is. It's actually a Megaroid. Oh yeah, really. After all this is settled and Joey has left an impression on the hunter by nearly sacrificing himself to save his village, the boy decides that he will become Samus's first disciple, to learn her ways and defend the galaxy, just as she does. As you can imagine, Samus refuses to bring a kid along with her on her extremely dangerous adventures, but agrees to at least take him to a nearby space station once she realizes that he's also lost people to the pirates. He's sort of been left alone on Liberty, although he does at least have his grandpa. This is where we meet the third and final main character, Diesel, an alien creature known as a craftsman, who is Samus's primary mechanic. Diesel's a bit grumpy, and a bit greedy, but he's a good guy, and although he doesn't get much of the spotlight compared to the other two protagonists, he's likable enough that when he does get center stage, you're happy to see it. One thing I love about Samus and Joey is that we get to see Samus on her off time, getting her ship repaired, interacting with normal people, visiting contractors and government figures, that kind of thing. The funny thing here is that she always keeps the suit on. And I mean, wouldn't you? If you could go shopping in the Varia suit that lets you jump over buildings and eradicate matter just by doing a flip, would you not? If you say no to that question, then I'm afraid you and I could never be friends. Now, I don't want to cover the whole story, because I think that you should read Samus and Joey yourself. It's not that long, only about 4 volumes, so you can read it in an afternoon. There's even a little Metroid Fusion bit in there to promote the game, so you Fusion heads can go wild. I do want to cover some of the highlights, and give some of my thoughts on it though. So if you want to give it a look yourself and come back, or just quit the video here, go ahead. I won't blame you. Really. Okay, well, I'll blame you a little. Seriously, I'll put a link in the description. Unfortunately, Samus and Joey was never translated officially, so like I said, the good folks at the Metroid database did the work for us. In fact, you can read every Metroid comic and manga ever released over there, and they're all worth it. Episode of Aether is another top pick, and not just because I love Metroid Prime 2. It's because Samus mows down a bunch of space pirates while dual-wielding her arm cannon and a minigun. There's even an unofficial Prime Hunter's doujinshi over there. It's crazy. Okay, well, they don't have every Metroid comic. They don't have the remodeling your shitter one. Don't go looking for that one, please. Alright, now that the weenies worried about spoilers and the weirdos looking up the remodeling your shitter comic are gone, let's get into the good stuff. Torvus's official, unofficial highlights. Although Samus and Joey doesn't run for very long, it mostly uses its short runtime for the best. We'll talk about when it doesn't a little later. I've already gone over the opening chapter a bit, but let's just admire how badass this guy draws Samus at every opportunity. Koji's art is sublime throughout the entire series, although sometimes Joey gets a little, anyway, the way he draws the Varia suit is just, I love it. There is a ton of detail in her arm cannon as well, and while Samus is based primarily on her Super Metroid design, I'm fairly certain he used Metroid Prime to have an easy full 3D reference of her. He loves to draw Samus crossing her arms like this, which is very cool. I don't think it's something we've ever seen officially. He also draws her in shadow a lot too, like this, which is, again, very cool. I know I'm gushing about this comic, but I was grinning like a moron every time Samus did something cool, which is a lot of the runtime. I'm sorry, I've got to admit it, I'm a Samus fanboy. Like, she absolutely levels this jabroni and his giant pet dragon. If I haven't driven home how anime this series is compared to the usual Metroid stuff, Samus calls out her attacks while using them. Her favorite finishers are her super missile, the screw attack, and the plasma charge shot, all of which are lovingly detailed as devastatingly powerful. I wish super missiles did this. The Ice Beam also makes frequent showings as Samus's go-to option for shutting down foes she can't get a handle on. Even the Shine Spark makes a couple appearances. Interestingly, the way she uses it is almost exactly like how Ravenbeak uses it in Dread. She doesn't run up or prepare at all, she just uses it in place. Oh, and she shoots power bombs out of her arm cannon instead of needing to curl into the morph ball. How come we can't do that in-game, Nintendo? What were you thinking? Speaking of the morph ball, Samus seems, especially attached to it in this. There's one part where she describes her upgrades as being a part of her soul, and I really like that. It's been established that the Varia suit is basically an extension of her body, so those upgrades would probably feel the same way. Now, being that Samus is a galactic-level badass already in Samus and Joey, a lot of effort goes into attempting to copy her, specifically her Chozo battlesuit, for nefarious purposes. Later on, an organization known as the Dominion, a shady group of arms dealers who start wars for profit and appear to be somewhat synonymous with the space pirates, becomes Samus's target, and she theirs. When Joey and Diesel unwittingly lead Samus to one of their operations, she engages with their Ultimate Warrior program, a group of machines meant to emulate Samus's combat strength. First off, there's the Samus Terminator suit, which is an imperfect copy of the Varia suit meant to house an actual person, rather than being what the manga calls a bioroid. Bioroids are robots with some organic parts. Unfortunately, this suit never receives an official coloration, but I'd like to imagine it's something like the thumbnail, or this other one I came up with. Other creations of the Ultimate Warrior program are the Integras, four-armed bioroids capable of resisting even the plasma beam, and can even deploy their own power bombs. Funnily enough, their visors are almost identical to Samus's own in Samus Returns. This even predates Dark Samus, who did the thin visor look first, by a couple of years. There's also the Hunter Killers, which look amazing. The Samus Tank, which I'm pretty sure is only Samus because of that little bitty head they put on it. And even more villainous Samusery that we don't even get to witness. As you'd expect, none of these even come close to the real thing. Now I want to go over one more thing before moving on to my brief review and finishing up, and that's the Amok Maw saga, as I'll call it. A medical ship carrying the comatose president of a Federation-controlled planet has gone missing near what most call the Demon Planet. It has an incredibly strong magnetic pull and sucks in any ships that go near it. Apparently, the medical ship risked proximity to the planet to avoid any would-be terrorist activity against the VIP as he underwent life-saving surgery. Sure enough, Samus Aran takes the case, with Joey and Diesel following close behind without her knowledge, finding it to be a frozen wasteland, inhabited by snow giants and pinguinis. Unfortunately, these are not your normal pinguinis. These are Amok Maws. Rocket-fueled, laser-blasting carnivores that hunt in hordes, devouring anything within reach like a school of ravenous piranhas. They've already eaten over half of the medical ship's security team when Samus and her companions arrive, with several more injured. The ship's engines are busted, meaning even if they were strong enough to escape the planet's gravity, the group is stuck. Samus's ship is too small to rescue everyone, and there's one more issue: the head doctor of the medical vessel is Joey's shitty, horrible mom. After his father died, Joey's asshole mom left the kid with his grandpa on their home planet to deal with the grief. This doesn't ever get addressed outside of some light whining by Joey, and I'm pissed about it, okay? Like, what an asshole mom. And they don't even treat her like selfish or anything. They're just like, oh, well, yep, I guess she left, shoot. Like, I know she's a doctor and she has work to do and stuff, but you can't take a little leave to be with your son after his dad dies? I know I'm being way too hard on her for a character that appears for like one chapter, but it rubs me the wrong way. Anyway, Joey doesn't want his mom, who I'm sure had her reasons, to be ripped apart by mutant penguins. To that end, he fights alongside Samus to try and stop the massive horde of carnivorous beasts from tearing through the hull of the ship to get at the tasty treats inside. Thankfully, it turns out the waves his field knuckle puts out annoy the Amok Maws enough to repel them momentarily. But after witnessing a security team member get ripped to shreds by the razor teeth of the local apex predator, and nearly having his own everything ripped off, the kid is shaken, and understandably so. He's also had trouble communicating with his mom since he landed, so nothing's going right for him on this planet. Much like the infamous scene from Other M, Joey's incapable of using his field knuckle until he gets his emotions in order. after a horrifying dream of his mother and all of his new friends as corpses. He gets a talking to from Samus about fighting even when he's afraid, and she even mentions that she's a bit jealous that he gets to fight with his parents. This restores Joey's will to fight, and more importantly, his ability to use the field wall to protect the innocents while Samus does most of the damage. While all this is happening, Diesel uses his expert machining skills to create a high-speed skiff out of what's left of the ship. With it, they can transport all of the medical staff and patients across the frozen wasteland to another ship he'd located with functional and much more powerful engines. It's a fight for life and limb at the speed of sound as the team make their way towards salvation, and I think it's one of the highest points of the manga. Everyone has their role in this arc. There's action, there's heart, there's dramatic moments. There's even a gigantic penguin mommy at the end that Samus and Joey have to blow up. It's really the best of this manga rolled into a single arc, and I think it has everything that makes the story worth reading. Now, I don't want to spoil any more than that, considering I've already talked about like half of the plot points already. It's a quick read, really. Despite all my praise, however, it's not perfect, so it's time to talk about the big, annoying stain on this otherwise enjoyable action-packed romp. That is the Greed arc. You see, Samus and Joey is actually 2 series. There's the first 3 volumes, then a final, longer volume called Metroid EX. That final volume is the story of Samus retrieving her lost abilities after having them stolen by a space pirate named Greed, who just so happens to be a member of the same race as Ridley. On the surface level, it's silly, but it's fine. If you've read this far, having watched Samus throw a nuke at somebody and cave a guy's head in with a punch, you're probably willing to buy that Ridley has a secret, evil twin brother or whatever. The problem is that the Greed arc is super rushed, and the majority of it lacks the heart and character of the rest of the manga. Samus finds and retrieves her powers at a lightning pace, and none of the chapters in which she does so are particularly interesting, until at least the second half or so. The fights with the space pirate captains who've been given her powers to guard are the majority of each of these chapters, meaning that you don't have any of the setup or context that you usually do with the stories in this series. When you watch Samus blow a hole in somebody or vaporize them with the screw attack, it's doubly satisfying after you've had to deal with the bastard for a while. These space pirate captains show up for like 2 pages before Samus wrecks their shit. It's disappointing, but in my opinion, the quality does come back before the series ends. So it's not all bad. You'll just have to be ready for that somewhat substantial speed bump if you decide to give it a read. And that's about all I've got to say about Metroid Samus and Joey. I think the series is absolutely worth the time you put into it. The characters are lovable, the action is badass and intense, the art is great, and the Metroid database fellas even threw in a few jokes for fans of the series. In fact, I think the manga's sense of humor is just great in general, and I never rolled my eyes at what was supposed to be a funny moment. Despite some chapters falling flat and a couple dud fights, Samus and Joey is a thrill to read. It represents a pretty different take on the series, one that I'm not sure everyone will enjoy, but I sure as hell did. I think it's this fresh perspective, in addition to the over-the-top crazy stuff that happens, that really puts it ahead of so many of the other, more forgettable or by-the-books Nintendo manga out there. Hopefully I've encouraged a couple of you to give it a read, or at least tricked you into watching all the way through this video. Either way, thanks for watching. It really means a lot. I really enjoy making these videos, so it makes me happy when somebody enjoys watching them. This has been Ultra Weeb Torbus. I hope you all have a great day, and God bless.